Thank you. How can we fly more sustainably? So this is a question I've been wrestling with for a very long time. It's starting when I worked for WestJet, and I was asked to put in place our sustainability program, and realized, of course, that one of the best solutions that we could use was sustainable aviation fuels, because it would help us decarbonize. We know we could do it now, but the problem was we didn't have any in Alberta or in Western Canada, or in Canada for that matter. So I did the usual thing. I called my suppliers in. We had a forum. We tried to figure out, if there were ways that we could look at in terms of advancing the use of this sustainable product. I actually spent some time looking to see whether or not we would put in place an innovation department within our company to look at maybe accelerating some of the technology. We explored whether we should become investors or just wait it out and let the market take care of it for us. I think what I realized, of course, is that this was going to be complicated and we couldn't do it alone. And so during that time, I was introduced to the EFL. I have to say, the introductory session that I went to, I knew this was a group that could help me achieve some of the objectives I was trying to get at. Here's a group of experts that were meeting and talking about the difficulties and the challenges of energy transition and using creative ways to come up with innovative solutions to put in place in order to achieve these energy transition initiatives. So when I changed jobs and I recently launched the Council for Sustainable Aviation Fuels, one of the first things I needed to do was put in place a roadmap. The first people I called were EFL because I was sure this was a group that could help me come up with a creative way and a new way of looking at how we can get a roadmap in place to advance sustainable fuels in Canada. So as I said, I think the strength in the EFL is really this access to a broad and impactful network of stakeholders. And certainly as we look at what I needed to do to put sustainable fuels in place, a lot of those stakeholders were a part of the EFL, the refiners, government funders, for example, your traditional stakeholders that helped out. But I think what the real strength is that there's a diversity in the network. And when we look, and this is particularly good for sustainable aviation fuels, because not only are we looking at the low carbon aspect of these fuels, aviation needs these fuels as well to enhance aviation sustainability. So that means we're looking at more than just a low carbon. We need to do partnerships with farmers and forestry companies to understand how their biomass and how their feedstock are cultivated and how we can ensure that they're doing it in a sustainable way. We know a lot of these SAF plants will be located in municipalities and regions outside the cities. And of course, we're always interested in striking up a partnership with the indigenous groups and seeing whether or not we can get some of these initiatives rolling. So looking at that network was really important. Having access to that broad and diverse stakeholders as well is key to helping shape my solution. We've been looking at sustainable aviation fuels ever since I joined EFL. We've had it as part of the fellowship, and that's certainly, we've had lots of discussions around trying to figure out how we could address this problem, how we could attack it, what are the challenges, what are the impacts. We did a few cool things. We had an innovators accelerator session that we had at one point, and that was really cool because we looked at what kind of barriers could we remove upstream and downstream to help us advance some of the sustainable fuel projects here in the province. But I think the key for what we looked at, or while we were looking at SAF, was just this concept of energy systems. And again, for sustainable aviation fuels, that's really important. We know we're a piece of a larger business in Alberta. The clean fuels companies, or the economy that's developing around that, green chemicals. We need to find our part in there and figure out how we play within that sandbox. Additionally, we know that there are other inputs in the energy system that we need to tap into, namely hydrogen and carbon storage and removal. These are key aspects that will not only help the production of sustainable aviation fuels as we move forward, but really for the future of aviation, where we're looking at some of these fuels to replace the traditional jet fuel that we use today with hydrogen. But carbon removal is actually one of the solutions that aviation is looking at in order to achieve some of our net zero targets. So bring all this together, all the learnings that we did, when it came time to plan for the roadmap, EFL helped me discover how we were going to do that. We actually partnered with the Transition Accelerator, and I think what we're putting in place is a roadmap that's like really different from what we see in other jurisdictions. And that's pretty cool, because what I find the problem with those roadmaps is that they just typically focus on sustainable fuels without really considering its part in the larger sort of energy system, which is what EFL looks at, right? So we came up with a plan, and this roadmap is a clean competitiveness roadmap. So what we're seeing, or what we're trying to do, is establish sustainable fuels as an economic opportunity for Canada in a net zero future. And EFL helped me put together a few interactive workshops with many of our stakeholders, and we use creative ways of determining what actions and initiatives and investments we could put in place. And it all came together with a shared kind of understanding of what kind of target we could put for sustainable aviation fuel. So that's where we ended up. So 1 billion liters of sustainable aviation fuels is our target for 2030. Remember, today nothing is being made, so we have a challenge of 1 billion liters in the next 8 years. The other thing that we know we need to do as well is activate some of our feedstocks that Canada has opportunities in. And that means really investing some of the technologies that we know that need to be matured to be able to handle those feedstocks and convert them to sustainable fuels. So part of the action plan is really driven around how we can mature some of those technologies to be ready to be deployed in 2030, so that we can scale up rapidly to increase the amount of sustainable fuels that are available. So what's really cool about this roadmap is that we're working towards a final version, hopefully to be released early next year. But even in this draft form, it's really doing its job. We've been able to coordinate a lot of the efforts around sustainable fuels within Canada, so it's really brought the ecosystem together and really working around that. And that was one of our objectives as Canadian Council for Sustainable Aviation Fuels, as well as being that go-to place for SAF development in Canada. So that's cool. One of the other things that it's done as well is really brought forward some of the issues that these stakeholders that had under the surface. And through discussion, we've brought forward things that we didn't know and that didn't exist. So things like sustainability around plant-based oils, energy security now is a huge issue within the federal government. Fighting or competitiveness over the biomass and who's going to use it is another issue that's come up. So these are all issues that were brought up through our discussions in the review of the draft, and that allows us to adjust our action plan accordingly. The coolest thing, I think, is we've actually influenced policy as well. So one of the sticking points that we had was that the federal government was charging carbon tax on sustainable aviation fuels, and we actually got them to change it. And there's a draft in place with Finance Canada where they've actually there's no more carbon tax on SAF. So that's a little barrier that we were successful in. So what I want to leave you with today is I hope take the advantage of today, and if you're joining EFL, we'll take advantage of that as well, and look at forming a new partnership. And I think you'll really be amazed and surprised at how EFL can help take your idea to flight. Thank you.